paying your kids. I can hire my kids, pay them $13,000 to do work, and that will be a deduction for me and my business. And because it falls within that range, my kids won't pay taxes on it. So it's basically $13K of tax-free money that I'm passing along to my kids. Now, I know there's issues, so I want you to kind of talk about a little bit more of the details, like documentation, and they've got to do real work and all that stuff. It's not just me writing them a check, right?
Yeah, I love how your eyeballs got bigger when you say that, because that's often the response I hear from people. So yes, it is paying your kids. People are always asking me, like, what do I need to do? What kind of documentation? And I tell people the easiest way to think about it is paying your kids is the same as paying anybody else. So for example, if you hired my kids to do what the tasks are, what are the things that you'd have in place, right? You'd have a job description. You would tell me how much you're going to pay me. There's going to be a way that I demonstrate or show the work that's being done. So you treat paying your kids the same as anybody else. And one of the key things IRS looks for is reasonableness. So reasonableness in two ways. One is reasonable, their age and the task have to be reasonable relative to each other. So like your 13-year-old, maybe we'll do some computer stuff. Your 2-year-old, probably not going to pay them for any computer related things. And the second thing is reasonableness and compensation, right? So again, if Mauricio was paying my kids to do those same things, what's a reasonable amount that he would pay them? And that's how much you determine. So although, we typically say, hey, up to 13,000 is the amount of money that's free from income taxes, that doesn't mean everybody will get to that amount. If your kids are much younger, maybe the compensation is less. If your kids are older, we have people who pay their kids, over $20,000 a year, especially for kids who are older, who are more capable of doing things. It still could make sense. Even, let's say your kid did have to pay taxes at 10%, but if you're saving taxes at 37%, then it still makes sense overall from a family perspective.
Yeah, that's key. I was about to say that because I know a lot of people, and I've thought about doing that one. I haven't done it yet, but you're paying zero taxes up to whatever that number is, 13 grand or whatever. And then anything above that, it's only 10%. So, and that's 10% of the margin, right? So it's 10% of that additional money on top. So it's not even 10% of the entire amount. So you could pay your kid over $20,000. Is there a minimum age requirement for your kids to work? Can I pay my 6-month-old for something?
Yeah. I mean, there's not an age requirement, like in terms of minimum or maximum. So yeah, it could be babies. It could be, a 40-year-old child, right? Your adult child who's moved back home. So there's no age requirements from an income tax or income shifting perspective. However, and that's, I'm glad, Mauricio, you're here. There are always legal considerations like labor law, right? We can't pay our 8-year-old to be working 40 hours a week because that's just not legal to do. So those are always things we have to take into consideration when we talk about income shifting too.
The kids for me was also, first of all, it's not a lot. When you think about $13,000, it's like $1,000 a month. So it's not like it's $50 an hour. But modeling for me was always, I never ended up doing it with my kids, but you could pay your 6-month-old or 1-month-old to model if you've got them on your website, or you're using it for promotional materials if obviously it makes sense. But in theory, could pay any age child to, if they're doing something. And of course, you got to figure out what's the going rate for modeling contract. How much would a kid, if you went to hire a kid, always document everything. But it's not that hard to find out how much it would cost for me to go, hire a 6-month-old to be on a campaign that I have that makes sense on my website, right?
Yeah. And it really differs from person to person too. For real estate investors, yeah, for younger kids, modeling, advertising, we see that a lot because it's common, right? That you're using that, or even some of our clients who are more into social media now, we see that. But we actually have a family friend whose son is an actual model. He just turned 18, but he models for like Abercrombie, and he gets paid a lot of money. And so to the extent, if that happened to be your child, you can imagine like that's a very significant amount of income shifting, even if it's for like modeling type stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to differ depending on, the kid and their abilities and kind of what their experiences are as well.
So if you enjoyed this clip and you want to see the entire episode, click here. And if you want to see other videos similar to this, click here.